Good morning. Welcome to Staff Day 2017. We have a wonderful agenda planned for you today. Lots of activities that promise to be interesting and thought-provoking and fun. So I'd like to start with telling you a little story. And this is a true story of something that happened to me a few years ago. I had an opportunity to do some contract work for the Department of Justice. I was part of a team that went into developing countries to help them work with their scientists and with their law enforcement personnel to set up their crime labs and learn how to run them. So at the time, I was living in San Diego. The rest of the team was in Washington, D.C. And this particular incident involved a trip to Tbilisi in the Republic of Georgia. So for any of you who, like me, are a little bit geographically challenged, Georgia is a small former Soviet bloc country in the Caucasus region of Eurasia. It borders the Black Sea, is north of Turkey and south of Russia. Primarily an agricultural country known for its produce and its wines, its dakas on the Black Sea, and its most famous native son was Joseph Stalin. So here we go. I'm off from San Diego to Tbilisi. I'm supposed to fly from San Diego to Chicago to London, then to Tbilisi. And it was the second week of February. Doesn't mean a whole lot in San Diego. Turns out it does mean something in Chicago. So we just barely landed in Chicago ahead of the snowstorm that shut down the airport for 5 hours. One thing you might want to know about me is that I can't sleep in airplanes and I don't like sitting in airports. So for 5 hours, I walked up and down O'Hare, until finally we were cleared to take off and fly across the country and across the ocean to London, where, big surprise, my flight to Tbilisi had already gone. So I went up to the concierge desk and I asked the young woman there if she could get me on the next flight to Tbilisi. And she said, "Oh yes, of course." I said, "Oh, that's great. When does it leave?" And she said, "Next week." And I said, "There's only one flight per week going from London to Tbilisi." So I said, that really doesn't work for me. What else can we do? So she did some checking and she said, "I can reroute you. I can send you to Moscow. And then from Moscow, you can get a connecting flight to Tbilisi." And I said, "That's perfect. When does that leave?" "In 3 hours." So up and down Heathrow, until finally we could leave. Flew to Moscow. Guess where else February means something? We got to Moscow, got onto my connecting flight, which turned out to be a little commuter flight, and my traveling companions were 6 Russian businessmen who had been, let's say, fueling up for quite some time. So we all got loaded on the plane. We got strapped in. Pilot fired up the engines. We started to roll down the runway and stopped. He said something over the intercom. I had no idea what it was. My juiced up friend next to me told me what it meant, that there was ice on the wings, and we had to wait for the crew to come out and de-ice the plane. So a few minutes later, several massively bundled up people came out with their equipment and worked on the wings. They backed up, they waved to the pilot, all good. My traveling companions cheered and passed around toasts from their "Don't Leave Home Without It" vodka supply. And the pilot started rolling down the runway and stopped. There's more ice on the plane. Guys come back, do the whole treatment again, wave to say it's okay. Everybody cheers, everybody toasts. Roll a few feet, stop. We went through this over and over again. I think the vodka supply was getting dangerously low. I know my nerve supply was dangerously low at this point. But finally, the pilot was satisfied and we were able to take off. So we got to Tbilisi. It was about 2 a.m. And at this point, I had been awake for roughly 37 hours. So I got into the airport, got my visa stamped, okay. I found the restroom. I collected my suitcase. I turned around and there was nobody there to meet me. I looked around and realized all that my traveling companions had already left. The middle of the night airport crew was gone. The visa guy was gone. There was no security guard. There was no concierge. There was no public telephone. I was in an airport by myself, did not speak the language, didn't know where I was, no cell phone. So I sat on my suitcase and thought, what do I do? Finally, I thought, wait, no, don't panic. This is an airport. There are always cabs outside airports. Problem solved. I have a piece of paper with the name of my hotel. I just have to hail a cab, show him the paper. It's all good. So, picked up my suitcase. I went outside. There were no cabs. What there was about 24 people, mostly men, standing around talking in the cold, in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, I don't really like this situation. So I turned around to go back inside, and the door was locked. So, took a deep breath, stood up straight and squared my shoulders, turned around, stepped forward, and I said, "Excuse me, does anybody here speak English?" And I waited, and I waited. And finally, a middle-aged man stepped forward out of the crowd, and he tipped his hat, and he said, "I speak." And I thought, well, that's good enough. So I pulled out my piece of paper and started trying to confer with him about where my hotel is and how could I get there. And while we are talking, another fellow comes out of the crowd, picks up my suitcase, and starts walking away with it. So I turned to the first guy, we'll call him Mr. Speak, and I said, "Stop that man!" So he ran after him and tackled him. And they're rolling around on the ground punching each other, and the crowd has now left me and circled around them and cheering them on. And I thought, I don't know what this is about. I don't want to be part of it. So I got my suitcase and I thought, I'll just walk somewhere. So I'm walking away as fast as I can. The fight breaks up. They come running after me. The first guy, Mr. Speak, grabs my arm and says, "No, no, no, you come, you come." And the second guy, Mr. Suitcase, again takes my suitcase. And they start walking me out toward the parking lot. The whole time we're walking, I'm in the middle, they're on either side of me. They keep reaching around me to punch at each other. We get to the car. My suitcase is deposited in the trunk. I'm deposited in the back seat. They both get in the front seat. Peel out of the driveway, off onto the dark, snowy highway. Going down the road very fast, again, they keep punching each other back and forth, and the car is going like this. And I thought, I'm going to die. Weeks from now, they'll find my broken body in a ditch. They're never going to find my suitcase. So, about that time, we left the highway, pulled off onto a much smaller, much darker road. And I thought, yep, this is it. And I am so tired, I just can't even. I'm going to close my eyes and wait for the end. So I waited, and the car stopped, and the driver door opened and slammed, and then the passenger door opened and slammed, and several minutes went by, And then the passenger door opened and slammed again, and there was silence. And finally, I couldn't stand it. And I opened my eyes, and there was Mr. Speak in the passenger seat. When he saw me open my eyes, he got this big smile on his face. He held up 2 cans. He said, "Coke? Sprite?" And I said, "I'm okay." I looked around and realized we're at a gas station. And Mr. Suitcase was just finishing putting gas in the car. He gets back in the car, slams the door, takes the can of Coke, pops the top, chugs about half of it, and goes, "Ah." Then off we go, back onto the highway. 5 minutes later, they delivered me to my hotel, escorted me inside and my suitcase, woke up the hotel manager, made sure I got checked in okay, charged me roughly 3 times the going rate for a ride from the airport, and then left with their arms around each other. Welcome to Georgia. So, why did I tell you that story? It's funny, but I actually had a reason. I wanted you to think about, I went into a situation that was unknown and exhausting and dangerous. But I went into it with certain characteristics, and let's be honest and call them advantages. I was educated, affluent, able-bodied, straight, white, adult, and American. And I was also lost and helpless and scared. Now think about somebody coming into our community here, coming to Lexington. And let's say that person has those same 7 characteristics: educated, affluent, able-bodied, straight, white, adult, American. What kind of experience would that person be likely to have? It's probably pretty good. What if you change one of those characteristics? Say it's a person without very much formal education, or a person of color, a person in a wheelchair, someone who doesn't speak English. Different situation. What if it's a person experiencing homelessness who also is facing mental challenges or addiction issues? What if it's a gay teenage refugee? Totally different story. And my point is, everyone has a story. Everyone has experiences and challenges that shape who they are and what their behavior is like. We don't always know what those stories are. When someone comes into our community, when someone comes into our libraries, we don't know what their story is. What we do know is what our mission is. Connect people, inspire ideas, transform lives. We do that every day. We do that by checking our biases when we come to work. We do that by creating a warm and welcoming environment for everyone who walks through the door. We do it by providing collections and services and spaces that speak to the issue of equity within our community. And we do it by just being warm and welcoming and being the good people that you all are. That's why our library is such a respected public institution and an important leader in our democracy. And it's why what we do, what you all do, is sometimes challenging, but always rewarding. And it's certainly why I am so proud of every one of you and the work you do each day in service of our community. So thank you.